In this video, I'm going to tell you a few things that you can do in Language Paper 1 to maximize your chances of success, because many of you have got this exam coming up very soon. Now, Language Paper 1 is divided into two sections. Most of what I'm about to say applies whichever exam board you are doing. So if you are doing AQA, Edexcel, Educas, or WJEC, which is the same thing as Educas, or any of those three exam boards, all of what I'm about to say will apply. There are a few small differences in how the questions are arranged, and I'll clarify some of those. For the most part, the methods and techniques I'm going to talk about are the same. Now, in all of those papers, whichever exam board you're doing, it's a two-section exam, and the two sections are equally weighted. The first section is reading, the second one is writing. Now, you're going to get an extract from a text, and it's going to be a fiction text. We also know roughly what period the text is going to be from. So for AQA, it's going to be 20th or 21st century, so a modern text. For Edexcel, it's going to be 19th century, so a Victorian text. And for Educas, it's going to be 20th century, so modern again. Now, that's useful to know. It means if you're doing Edexcel, then I recommend, even if your school dropped the 19th century novel, you need to be revising 19th century texts, understanding the language, themes, and ideas that they talked about in the 1800s. You actually need to do that as well for AQA, because it applies in Language Paper 2, but not in Language Paper 1. Now, when you get this text, the first thing you want to do, don't follow the exact instructions on the paper. Don't spend 15 minutes reading it. I recommend 10 minutes, and also use that time to answer the first question. So for AQA, the first question is a 4-mark question, which just asks you to state 4 pieces of information if they're true or false. For Edexcel, it's very similar. It's actually split into 2 parts, so you've got a 1-mark and then a 2-mark question. They're looking for the same thing. For Educas, you've got a 5-mark question, but again, it's looking for the same thing, very simple information. And that first question or 2 questions is easy. It's designed to be easy. Most students get full marks on it. Now, they put it in the paper just to warm you up. It's not really there to actually challenge you at all. So you don't want to be spending too much time on that question. What you need to do is do it during your reading time. Now, also use your reading time, by the way, to annotate the text, because the other questions you're going to face will require you to go back to that text and pick out things to analyze. You're going to have to analyze language and structure. You're also going to have to evaluate. Now, let's take a step back and think about what those things mean. To analyze is to explain the effect of writing. Now, you can analyze by saying, well, this phrase makes us think or feel that about this because of this. That's analysis. You may analyze language, which means words, or structure. What is structure? Well, don't overthink the concept, but structure is just the beginning, middle, and end of the text. So in a question that asks you to analyze structure, you need to write about how your perception of the text changes during the experience of reading it. How the reader feels and thinks one thing at the beginning, then the middle, then the end. And that's it. And yes, you can bring in some particular structural techniques like types of sentence or types of paragraph, or if you notice a circular construction or a non-chronological order or anything like that, that's good as well. But the core of structure is beginning, middle, and end. Language is the words, so the techniques that relate to words. And then evaluation. Evaluation requires analysis, by the way. Evaluation means giving an opinion, but justifying that opinion. So in an evaluation question, they'll ask you, well, do you agree with this view of the text? Do you agree with what this student said? Do you agree, for Edexcel, it's do you agree that the writer achieved this effect effectively? Or do you agree that the writer created a sense of suspense or tension effectively? Whereas for AQA, they'll give you a student's opinion, like, all of our sympathy goes to this character, do you agree? Or to what extent do you agree? Now, the point is that when you're doing any of these 3 skills, you're able to apply the same methods. So, in all of the papers, after those first easy questions, the next question asks you to analyze language. For AQA, question 2 is 8 marks, analyze language. Question 3 for AQA is 8 marks, analyzing structure. For Edexcel, you get a 6-mark question asking you to analyze language and structure together. For Educas, you actually have 2 separate questions asking you to analyze language. So either way, you're going to be analyzing language. That means zooming in on the effect of individual words. Now, I recommend using a structure here called PETER, P-E-T-E-R, point, evidence, technique, explanation, and reader. Why? Because it forces you to zoom in on the technique, to analyze that effect in detail, and to mention the reader, which it is easy to forget. You need to make sure that you talk about the effect it has on the reader, how they think and feel. Now, you annotate the text after you read question 2, 3, and 4. So you know what's coming up, then you do your reading, you answer question 1, and at the same time you annotate the text. You could use different colours for things you want to talk about in question 2, question 3, and question 4. Then when you come to those questions, they're easy. You already know what you need to talk about. So once you've done your analysis of language, then you're going to be analysing structure. And if you're doing Edexcel, like I said, it's part of the same question. You've got to make sure you have a balanced answer, 1 paragraph on language, 1 on structure. And then you'll do some evaluation. So then you'll have to debate an opinion. Do you agree with something? And you've got to give a reason for your opinion. So I agree the text is scary because of this. Then you give an example. Then you analyse the effect of the language in that example to back up your opinion. So you're analysing language again in that next question, in the evaluation question. So they'll actually tell you, for AQA specifically, you have to analyse language in this question. For Edexcel, they won't tell you that. They will only tell you get marks for evaluating. Believe me, it's impossible to evaluate without analysing. Otherwise, you will have no justification for your opinion. You just give evidence and don't explain how it supports your point. So you still need to analyse language for Edexcel, maybe not in quite as much detail, but you still need to have that link and that explanation. So, once you've done this, you'll then have the creative writing section. The other thing that you can annotate when you're reading the text to help you out here is annotate some techniques that you could use in the creative writing in section B. Because often the creative writing task is on a similar topic to the text that you read in section A. So there's a link between them and it's logical to use the same kind of techniques. So when you plan your creative writing, don't overthink it, don't overplan it. Just spend a couple of minutes, set out what to do in each section of the text, of your text, of your writing. And also from the annotations, you have a list of techniques, tick them off as you go, but don't decide yet in advance precisely when and how you're going to use each one. Two more things I'm going to tell you about how to get easy marks in the creative writing. First of all, make sure your story has a clear ending. It's so important. Most students miss out on having a good ending. A story basically needs 5 parts. So an introduction that explains what's going on, gives the reader context. You need a incident that triggers an event. You need a build-up, a crisis, so like the peak of the action, a big problem that has to be solved, and then the resolution, how that problem gets solved or what happens next. And that part is easily missed out. Make sure you've got a satisfying ending to your story. Second thing, use structural techniques, like a 1-sentence paragraph to make impact, for example, or a 1-line paragraph, or vary the sentence types. Things like this, simple structural techniques you get a lot of marks for because most students don't use them, but examiners are told to look for structural techniques that you've used to make your writing interesting. And remember in creative writing that the examiners are not looking for something imaginative and amazing. What they're looking for is simply that you're able to write in a skilled way. It doesn't really matter what you write about. So whatever idea comes to mind, I'm sure that it is good enough. Just be confident, just go with it. Write the first thing that comes to mind. Think of some good techniques to use. And be confident and calm that your ability in writing will shine through whatever you choose to write about. So that is my summary for language paper 1. Most important thing to take away from this, remember the difference between language and structure. Remember what evaluation involves. Remember to annotate well. And remember to be confident and don't overthink your creative writing. Hope that is helpful. If you found this useful, press the subscribe button. We have more videos like this on different papers and different sections of the exam to help you out during your revision. See you soon.